Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, John Mara's least favorite podcast's favorite podcast. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike the Cranky Fan. The Giants fell to the Ravens 35-14. There was another plane flying overhead, and things are looking bad in Giants land. Normally, I wouldn't really be losing my mind in the middle of a tank. I think I've been pretty jovial throughout most of this process. You're getting full Grump today, and I think you're going to get quite a bit of Cranky as well. Happy holidays, Cranky Fan.
Oh, Grump, we had a wonderful family weekend. The highlight of the weekend was not going to the Meadowlands on Sunday. We got to spend some time with the fam at our annual Christmas party. It was a great time. We had side by side the Jets and the Giants. So the fact that our family would still be able to be sing Christmas carols and be happy to be with each other says something about our family dynamic more than the state of New York football. So we only have a few more of these left before we can get on with the business of rebuilding this organization. But it's glad to see that the Giants, as an organization, are handling with this all the class and respect that we come to deserve from this team.
Yeah, slight teaser there. So in this game, and again, I'm happy with this loss. I guess I don't really know what it is that I want to see. When most of this roster is not, most of the guys playing on the field are not really part of the bigger picture of the roster at this point. We've got a ton of guys not playing for injury, a ton of guys going to IR, probably a little bit sooner than they would be if this were a winning season and they were playing for something. We have our second string quarterback in a boot. Third string quarterback suffered a concussion in this game, and the fourth string Tim Boyle came in there. Actually looked at least somewhat competent despite physical limitations. He was able to get the ball to Malik Neighbors. He was able to get a passing touchdown, which is something that has not really happened a whole lot this year. 14 points on the board for the Giants is pretty pathetic, but for the Giants, it's not so bad in 2024. The Giants defense was able to get at least one sack of Lamar Jackson. I'm not going to lie, I had only like one eye on this game. But again, this game was going the way I wanted in that it wasn't close, because you and I were kind of worried during the Saints game right at the end there. And by kind of worried, I mean super worried that they were going to screw up and win.
It's politically correct to say, well, the best case scenario would be if they kind of make it close but lose at the very end. Keep it interesting. But the reality is you can't be half pregnant. You can't half tank. You need to lose. And I don't want, and I know this sounds very harsh. It doesn't sound like I'm really a Giant fan, but it's the exact opposite. I'm in this for the long haul. And the best thing that can happen for this team is to fall behind 14-0 in the first 5 minutes of each game. So one fluky play doesn't lead to a potential win and screw up a plan that they've obviously put together and are executing now that is alienating fans, media, plane flyers, and whatnot. So, I've seen this happen with the Knicks. I don't want this happening with the Giants. We are tanking. We were doing everything we can to possibly tank. Don't win. And don't keep it close. I don't need to see scrubs that are not going to be a part of the future or fighting for roster spots next year. I'll spend all offseason next year. I'll spend all preseason watching battles to see who'll be the third and fourth string wide receiver or long snapper. Not right now. Please just lose early and often.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, this is what we want. The objective is to get the best possible draft position so that you get either the quarterback of your choice or the most valuable position to trade away. Whatever they decide, we're not really getting into off-season stuff right now, but the thing is that no matter what the situation is, whether it's a down quarterback year or this, that, and the other thing, this is the objective at this point. They are where they are, and they are in the best position to lose now. Don't screw around and start winning like Jacksonville did. Jacksonville did themselves a tremendous disservice by winning. Although, no, they did a tremendous disservice. Like I said, because even though Trevor Lawrence has just signed a big extension, having that top pick to give to the Giants, so that they can hop over the Raiders and get their pick of quarterback, would have yielded them plenty of things that they could use to improve their roster around Trevor Lawrence.
So I think short-sighted, narrow-minded franchises look at it as my best chance to get this player. Smart organizations that, for whatever reason, are in this position look at it as what gives me the most options for the future. And that's what it is. Jacksonville lost some levers to pull and some options to take. And we don't want to fall in that situation either. We're taking emotion out of this. We've already sucked out all of the hope for wins, and the season's over. Now let's just be analytical about this, and let's just be logical. The best thing to do for this team, if you're a fan of this team, is lose the rest of the way. Give us the most options heading into this offseason. Period. Case closed. End of discussion.
Yeah, take all your lumps in one shot. I would rather get pummeled all of this year and move on and let everything be uphill from there, than deal with getting half of a pummeling for 3 straight years. I'm kind of sick of that.
And remember, as we talk about last week, this week, next week, the week after, this is the execution of this plan to get in the position we want to be in. So nothing, and from my mind, is changing from week to week to week. I have the exact same position I had on coach and GM. My anger level hasn't changed anything. This is what we wanted when we decided to do this. They're executing the plan. So do I want anyone fired more? I mean, am I more embarrassed now? No. This is the path we took. I've accepted it because I know what we wasn't good enough, and so be it. So I'll say it every week until the season's over. Nothing has changed for me.
Yeah, and I saying that I don't want a GM or coach fired any more today than I did yesterday or the day before is not saying. It just means that nothing that's happened between now and then, especially anything that's happened on the field, is moving the needle. The evidence of whether or not I want to fire or retain anybody on this team is stacked up until the moment that they benched and then subsequently released Daniel Jones. That being said, this is what really pisses me off. And I'm almost positive that by the time you're listening to this, you'll have already seen that Talkin' Giants has put out a podcast episode, and I believe they've already spoken about this. But over the weekend, I want to say it was Friday, Talkin' Giants released, and it was specifically just Bobby Skinner, a video that was about a half hour long detailing why the Giants should fire Joe Schoen as GM. And I'm gonna front load this and say that I don't agree with 100% of the video, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that it was a very objective, calm, and fact-based and conclusion-based video. This was not venting. This wasn't emotional. There was no frothing at the mouth. This was a very calm, very well thought out, very detailed video. And
it was like a prosecutor stating his case at a trial.
Yeah, I would say almost, or like a senior thesis. I mean,
yeah.
And from what I understand, the Giants reached out to Talkin' Giants and snapped. Told them that they are never helping them with anything ever again. I don't know exactly what it is they've helped them with in the past. But this to me is the most embarrassed I've ever been at this organization, because throughout the years, I've been a fan since I was born in the late 80s. So most of my childhood, I endured, Dave Brown, Danny Cannell, like really bad Giants years. I remember my father taking me to a football game when the Giants, I think, won 4 total games that whole year. And I was happy that I got to see one of those 4 wins when I went to that football game. Losing happens. It's sports. And I think of all professional sports, football is one of the most fair because there is a hard salary cap and you cannot buy your way to winning in the NFL. You as an organization have only yourself and luck to blame for when things go right or when things go wrong. It is not baseball where Steve Cohen can spend 850 million or whatever, I don't like baseball, but can
And,
spend absurd amounts of money on one player and no one else can get him, and it means nothing.
and we say that as being fans of a team in a market where a lot of fans are also Yankee and Met fans who have the privilege and the fortune of being in their market where they can spend whatever they want. So
Right.
for us to say that, to be a truly, I was gonna say it's truly democratic sport, really almost a truly socialist sport where, you know,
Yeah.
you can't rely on your wealth or your fortune of where you're located.
No,
It
it's
has
a
to
it's
be
a
on.
total meritocracy.
Yeah.
Or at least as close as I've seen in any professional sport of being a meritocracy. And, I accept that bad football is going to just happen sometimes. I mean, I look at the 2008 Giants that had everything going for them, and the wrong player shoots himself in the leg, and the entire season is over. And that stinks, but sometimes shit happens. You know what I mean? And I can accept that. I can accept bad football. I can accept one bad contract to one quarterback that wasn't the guy setting you back 2 or 3 years. I can accept these things because it's part of sports. What I cannot accept is pathetic, thin-skinned, classless behavior where, we're sitting here talking about fans taking their lumps, the Giants taking their lumps and just lose these games, suffer through the end of the season, and move on to the next thing. If you can't
After
take, you can't take a critical video actually being critical.
Well, it's take your lumps after a decade of being the worst franchise in the league. So we have, those Super Bowls are ancient history. There is a whole generation of Giant fans who that could be black and white video they're watching of Ahmad Bradshaw and Eli Manning. So you have a decade of that. You're being asked, you know, we've thrown in the towel. We have punted on our quarterback. We are in effect starting over. Like we're starting over before it's time to start over with the draft. Even it's like -6 months before, -6 BC before we're getting it, and you know all of these shows. Us talking Giants, all of our friends who do this. We don't do this because we want to be rich off it. We don't do this because this is our living and we live in the hills like in Alpine, New Jersey or on the 82nd floor of a high rise in Manhattan. We do this because we are Giant fans. We love this team. We consume a lot of information. We have opinions. We have opinions that we think other people want to hear. We are free promotion, free. We're helping a product in an industry get word of mouth more. And when things start to go bad, you bite the hand that's feeding you. It is the utmost of disrespect that you can do is, to treat your customer. And in sports, fans are not just customers. They love, nobody loves a can of Alpo. They buy it. But you love the New York Giants. And to do that, it's just, we have become all of those organizations that we've made fun of for all these years. We have become the Jets, not because we suck on the field or butt fumbles or any of that nonsense. We've become the Jets because we are down to their classless level. And that is, it's a harsh reality now, and it's hit close to home, and it kind of makes you look differently at the organization and at the team itself.
We are approaching. So, Giants fans that were born the year of the 2007 Super Bowl have their license, their driver's license at this point. Let that sink in. We are approaching 2025, which will be the 20-year mark that John Mara became the president and CEO of the New York Giants. 20 years. It's time to get over our past accomplishments here. If you can even call inheriting a team that had already had a franchise quarterback an accomplishment. This is This is by far the most embarrassed and upset I've ever been. You know what I mean?
Well, let's put things a little bit into context here. So, really briefly, we both watched the videos. I'm sure most of you have done, and for the life of us, in relative terms, we don't even know what Bobby said that triggered them off. I have one theory, but I'll let you go first. When you watched the video, did you see anything that said they're going to get the wrath of the Giants for this?
No, and what's weird is, like I said, because it wasn't. I don't know. I think the only thing I can think of is that Talking Giants has been popular enough and enough free publicity for what has been nothing but a failing product since they've been here. Since Talking Giants has been around, the Giants have not been anything good outside of 1 year that they've made the playoffs. I think it's gotten to the ears within people in the organization. I think they are more than aware of that show. I think that they are aware of what's being said. I don't know if they have like someone that's like part of the front office that's monitoring shit on social media or what, for guys like really big channels like theirs or like Big Blue Banter or New York Revival, these shows that have huge followings, that have actual guests that are former players or Kay Adams or whatever. I don't know if they have someone that monitors that shit, but it sure as hell seems like it. And the only thing I can think of is that it just disrupted them so much. It just chaps their ass so much that they are just outright saying this needs to happen. It's been bad for 3 years. And I don't know who exactly in the organization it pissed off, but it pissed off somebody, and it's pathetic. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about a YouTube channel, and I don't want to diminish anything that they've done, because you and I have watched Talking Giants explode in popularity.
They're the gold standard for what all of our shows want to be. We all know that.
I would say around the league or around sports.
Yeah, because they are not accredited media people. They don't have, when we at a game, once we leave the tailgate, Justin goes up top. Bobby buys his tickets on SeatGeek. Give them a plug because they plug their show. They don't have press passes to go in and wander the sidelines or go up. And maybe that's kind of the diplomatic immunity some of these other shows has, because the criticism I hear on some other shows, which I won't even name, is far more harsh than we heard from those guys. But maybe because they're behind the media badge, that they're not going to get the same criticism or the same pettiness against them, and because their megaphone is bigger and there's a brotherhood of union people. To me, Grump, I think, and this is a spoiler alert. If you have not watched the video yet, I implore you to watch it. Hit pause on us and then come back later. When you get to the very end of the video, Bobby first, he spends most of the time going off on Joe Shane, justifiably so. Good points. Again, like Grump says, I don't 100% agree, but I agree with a lot of what he says. Compelling argument. Goes off on Brian Dable a little bit. Then he talks about Mara, and he mentions the fact that why is Chris Mara keep falling upwards? And he said the N word. Not that word, nepotism. And I think that triggered and crossed the nerve with John Mara and the Mara family, that, they have always been very protective of Chris Mara, and he's been getting criticism before. And I think for a platform as popular and successful as theirs to straight out say it, I think that's what caused all of this thing. It's that petty personalness, that I think is what did it. And something, I say to Bobby Skinner, you get the star of the month if we're doing stars and farts for this week, because God damn it, somebody has to say it. Just because you hit the genealogical lottery of being related to a grandfather who bought a team for $100 in 1925 doesn't mean you have any right to be in the front office of any football team, much less selling fucking peanuts in row section 323. So, it's bad enough that you are where you are, but you're getting propped up and defended by your family, and you are thin-skinned about it. That stinks to high hell, and that's what scares me about this organization going forward. Is oh, does Joe Shane, is he worthy of our trust to quarterback? Mara, are you worthy of our trust that you can do anything right with this organization? Because we've been in the shitter for a decade, and it doesn't see any way out of this. And it always starts at the top.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. I don't know. But when I first listened to it, I didn't hear anything in there that was like, oh man, here comes the shitstorm. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think that at all. Like I said, it was a very calm video with nothing but objective points, point by point, broken down into categories on how
Nothing was
you
personal.
evaluate a GM. Nothing was personal. I guess unless you want to count that. But even then, is still an objective football opinion. Why does this man get to be in the building? What has he done?
Yeah.
Why? Tell me why. And if that, I don't know what it is about that, but you can't. Nothing in there is worth getting offended of or acting that way. This to me is right on par with the Panthers owner whose name is escaping me throwing a drink in a fan's face.
Pepper.
It's the same thing.
Sure.
Or him showing up at a bar that had a sign in front of it, or what, a bar or restaurant that had a sign in it said that
Grump.
he was a shitty owner or whatever the hell, was showing up and trying to intimidate him, swinging your dick around. Enough. Let's talk about John Mara's time since being an owner.
Well, but before that, I want to say one thing about this is that the Giants have put themselves in a position that is unorthodox and out of the box. They want you to accept losing on purpose for the greater good. You need to do everything you can to keep this fan base, the media, mouthpieces like Talking Giants and us and everything on your side to weather this storm, because I guarantee the conversations about are we going to do this or not involved what is the blowback going to be. Now it's become a cartoon with planes flying around and all this horse shit and everything, but you knew it was going to be bad. You knew this was unorthodox. You knew this is potentially going to take a couple of years of real pain. Why risk alienating the people that are your cheerleaders and mouthpieces to it? I'll never understand that. So let's talk about Mara and his Hall of Shameness.
Yeah, you're a billionaire. Get over it.
Yeah.
So John Mara took over as president and CEO in 2005. By that time, Eli Manning was already a New York Giant, and we had a mostly assembled roster. You already have Tom Coughlin as a coach. 2 years later, they go to the Super Bowl. Again, mostly a roster that was already assembled. By about 2012, becomes the fall. So we're talking less than 10 years later, things start to slide out of control. 2011, remember, the Giants' end was one of Eli Manning's best years as a quarterback. A team that went 9-7, snuck in backwards as a wild card, was able to go on a run and win a Super Bowl. 2012, things fell apart, and they slowly dipped over time. We saw Jerry Reese remain on as a general manager for far too long. I've had some arguments with people over how bad of a drafter Dave Gettleman was or Joe Shane was. No one was a worse drafter than than Jerry Reese and Mark Ross. You want to go through it? Go ahead. I'm not going to go through over 10 years of bad drafting, but when you hit on only one player every single year and everyone else is a miss and all your trade ups are misses, everything's a goddamn miss outside of your first round pick, you're awful. You're awful at drafting. They choose to walk away from the second best coach in Giants history. At least recent history. I don't know if we want to go back to Vince Lombardi being an offensive coordinator here or whatever.
They're the head coach, yeah.
Sure. But they decide to walk away from him, let his contract expire, and stick with a GM and I don't know what the official title for Mark Ross was when he just handled the drafts, but two guys in the front office that absolutely stunk up out loud. They bring us Ben McAdoo because they couldn't let modern football walk away. We watched that absolutely catapult out of control. They bring us Dave Gettleman because they're incapable of doing anything.
Remember, Grump, they brought in Ben McAdoo. They were afraid he was going to go to the Eagles.
Right.
It was yeah. No kidding.
In 2009, John Mara is at least somewhat responsible for building a stadium that nobody likes. A
Yeah.
modern stadium that absolutely sucks nuts and is in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing redeeming about the stadium other than it's more functional than the stadium before it, which was built in 1976 or something.
The only good thing about it is it does nothing for the fans. It lines the pockets of the two owners of the stadium. That's it. But for us and for the team itself, I mean, it has a reputation, warranted or not, that it kills careers because of a horrible turf.
Oh,
Good
that
job.
too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, he's got that on his resume, and you bring in Dave Gettleman, you let him retire. It's been nothing but a circus since John Mara got here, and after winning having two Super Bowls almost handed to you, where you're already on third base essentially,
Mhm.
you still have a sub 500 record at this point. Is remarkable. To have that head start and still be sub 500 at this point is just absolutely remarkable. And I know John Mara is not, fully responsible for everything, but at what point do you have any right to be this thin-skinned that a YouTube show, a YouTube video makes you react like a child? I'm sorry, but this to me is sad. It's pathetic. This is the worst that sports kind of gets, is when people start acting like children and take the blocks away from the other kid. Nope, I only get to play with the blocks. That level of fucking pathetic behavior, I do not understand the way billionaires act like children, and I'm
Because
more upset about this than having to do a show for fucking 5 years, 6 years, however long we've been doing this, never win anything. I can deal with losing. I cannot deal with this.
It's very simple why guys like this are, because this is a guy that was born, with a football silver spoon in his mouth. This is a guy that, from the time he knew what colors were, knew what the New York Football Giants was. He lived it his entire life. He was going to inherit this team. He is a typical, entitled, privileged person. And when you're entitled and privileged, you think the world is your oyster and you have done nothing wrong, even though, again, you won the genealogical lottery because, who your dad and grandfather was. So it's very easy to see how, not taking criticism, becomes a small thing becomes a problem. And I know let's put a little asterisk that we can't confirm that it was exactly him, but the stink usually comes from the top. And, this has, because again, going back to my theory of the nepotism thing, I can connect the dots so easily to it. So I'll put that out there on me for saying that. And, it's, you have, this year has been the most embarrassing. This is the 100th anniversary season of the New York Football Giants. And what have we done? All the things that, Mara says he was, doesn't believe in. This is a proud organization. We'll never succumb to being on a Hard Knocks. We were on it. We were a total disgrace. Oh, we don't want to, we don't believe in Thanksgiving, want to be with the family. Oh, there we are playing on Thanksgiving. Don't like night games. We're on how many goddamn primetime night games when we have no worthiness to be on primetime TV. Our record sucks on primetime because we suck. It's just all these things are just, we're adding self-imposed buffoonery to make us the laughing stocks that we deserved. And this is not, undeserved criticism and undeserved, laughing stockness. We've earned this, and it starts at the very top. The question is, what are you gonna do about it? You are a king. We can't vote you out. We can't vote you off the island. We don't have an election in 4 years in November to get rid of you. We're stuck with you. What are you gonna do? Look in the mirror, take the criticism, and really honestly self-assess. I don't know if that's possible when you are someone like him who owns a team and has been birthrighted since birth.
And I don't know if you prefaced this. Yeah, you did. We don't know exactly who it is that reached out or who got offended or what. I don't know. But I do know that the Giants are on this track because of poor decision making at the top. And you can go one of two ways. You can either look at it and be like, whoops, better learn from my mistakes. or you can lash out and throw all your toys all over the floor and get mad about it and stomp your feet. And it's really disappointing that we've decided to choose the latter. And by really disappointing, I really cannot think of a time I was more disappointed in this organization, because it was always easy to fall back on, the Giants are one of the premier organizations in the league. The Maras have a lot of influence, and to his credit, John Mara has always prided himself on the overall NFL fan experience. Like you said, night games, being unfair to fans, the amount of exclusivity that we've seen to streaming games and pricing fans out of watching games and all that stuff. He's been very outspoken, and I'm sure that, in those meeting rooms, guys like Roger Goodell and other 31 owners don't want to hear that shit because they like getting money.
He's outspoken, but he's not as influential as Wellington was.
Sure.
I mean, because
nor should he be.
Because these things are happening now. He doesn't command the room like a Jerry Jones does now. And that's sad. I mean, one thing if you're a Wellington mayor where your word means something, but what does his word actually mean now? What do other owners even think of him at this point?
And the thing is, the other thing I guess you can pride yourself on is that I do honestly think that John Mayer cares very deeply about this team, and the product that goes out on the field. There are plenty of owners out there in sports that truly don't care about what the team does because it's just a moneymaker for them. I mean, look no further than the Pittsburgh Pirates. Truly don't give a shit that their team is just god awful every single year. I feel for those fans. I do. And there's nothing you can do about it because, again, you can't really vote them off.
It's a whole baseball and football are apples and oranges, the way revenue's set up, how it's uneven and everything.
Sure.
So,
fine. But at the end of the day, an owner that cares versus an owner that doesn't care, I truly believe that John Mara cares and wants his team to do very well. It's the one thing that he focuses on is the New York Giants. He doesn't have some other business that is his number one focus, and this is a toy for him. This is his life, and I appreciate that.
Two things can be true at once. Once again, it's our theme of the show, that more than one thing can be true at the same time. He may, in his heart of hearts, care about the New York Giants more than anything else on the face of the earth. He also may be just very poor at his job. He has no qualifications to where he is other than his genes. And I don't mean his Levi's. Plug for the Cranky Fan.
And to be, neither do we, but I'm not going to throw a fit when people are like, I'm unsubscribing to your show. I don't care. Fine. You know what? If we don't entertain you, then don't subscribe. I don't care. Yeah. I'm not, I have not put a gun to anybody's head and said, listen to my show. Ever. In fact, I've never asked for money. I don't have a Patreon set up for this show. This is just, something I do because we would do this anyway. We're just hitting record now.
Yeah, we need to talk about that Patreon thing, by the way.
But I'm just saying, I'm not pissing and moaning when things don't go my way, or if the subscriber count isn't. I don't fucking care. That is so irrelevant to me. I do this because I love it, and that just is what it is.
If you don't like it, leave. And I've said that before a lot of times on this show, that somebody says something they don't like, and they if they don't like it, if you don't like it, we live in a great society right now where you have 4,000 channels and 55 million podcasts to listen to, and hours and hours of porn out there if you want to watch. Do something else instead of watching this show if you don't like it. It's perfectly fine. I'd like you to watch us. It'd be great.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, exactly. I don't know. This is sort of going off the rails now, but I am.
It's seasons off the rails, Grump. I mean, it's the way it is.
I didn't think I was going to get mad. I was kind of proud of how not mad I've gotten at silly things. We're not even talking about people flying planes, which I think is sort of pointless. I think it's money wasted.
It's fucking stupid because something. First of all, it's already been done 50 years ago, 40 years ago, and it was effective back then. Now you are just copycatting, and now everybody's copycatting, and it's like, do you really think Mayor looks up at the sky and is like, does he think he cares about that? I don't think he cares about that at all. I mean, if you flew a plane around and said, hey, stop with the nepotism. Maybe that'll get a reaction out
Ooh.
of it. Maybe he'll ban planes from the state of New Jersey. I don't know, but just because you're frustrated, all that stuff. That's now we become the joke. We're now the sideshow, and it's snowballed completely out of control. And the best thing that can happen for this season is for this season to end. Quite honestly, so
Oh
we
yeah.
are. So that the all this other nonsense and horseshit can be dealt with in the offseason, and we can start actually doing something, because as much as you may not like Joe Shane at this moment, there is really nothing Joe Shane can do right now until the season is over. So we're just in that no man's land. We just have to kind of deal with it. So my advice to the Giants, I'm sure they're not listening, and I'm sure they wouldn't listen anyway, is, put a positive on this as much as you can and keep your fans loyal, because the Washington Redskins had one of the most loyal fan bases forever. They had a 50-year waiting list for tickets, and you saw what one bad owner did to the goodwill of that. To no more sellouts. People hate that team. They're starting from almost scratch. Just don't take it for granted that this fan base will stick with you through thick and thin. It's great to say. It's a nice rah-rah thing to say. It might be in your theme song, but when the shit hits the fan and you don't respect them, they're going to tell you to take a flying buck. So don't put yourself in that position. Bad as it is on the field right now, don't embarrass your fan base. Don't take it for granted. Don't insult it, and don't be heavy-handed with them. I don't care if that person is Bobby Skinner or if it's Joe the schmuck who's in section 343 who spends his last dollar on tickets. Treat everybody with respect.
Yeah. And learn to take some criticism, for God's sakes, and move on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm it always felt like no matter how much losing, we were never the Jets. This is the first time I've really felt like we're the Jets.
I think this is the icing on the cake for me, that this season we've become the Jets. I mean, the being on Hard Knocks and that performance on there was like, we have reached Jets desperation level of trying to get it. I mean, the Jets will always be the champions. I mean, just look at Aaron Rodgers, say no more. But we are starting to, play in their neighborhood now, and it's got to stop. And hopefully it's, winning does a lot to clear a lot of that, but it's culture. And I don't like the way the culture of this team is going, and that starts at the top also.
I think that's probably going to do it for this episode. No amount of medium Pepsis is going to make me feel better. So, um, be sure to listen on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. We will have a preview episode for who's our next Who's Embarrassing Failure. Is that the Colts?
No, we're in Atlanta. We right now are,
yes.
We're in the fourth quarter. They're only up 12-3 for Vegas. So, Vegas want to do us a favor and win. Go ahead.
No, wait, what? What are you talking about? We're going to... We play Atlanta next week?
Yeah, in Atlanta.
In Atlanta. Okay.
Yeah. That's how checked out we are, ladies and gentlemen.
I know the opponents. I forget the order. And I honestly...
In Atlanta, home against the Colts, and then at Philly.
Right. Yes. And that is the stretch. And honestly, I thought that was what I was going to have to endure, not childishness. So, we'll have a preview episode on that. I guess we'll talk about which quarterback is starting, since that's all up in the air right now.
We may talk about the Gasparilla Bowl the next day. That might be more exciting, actually. So
sure.
We'll see how it goes.
But I guess we'll see you all on Friday morning.
And something. One thing before we go, I do want to say that we really appreciate. We were joking before about, well, don't subscribe if you like.
Yeah.
We really, 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 really do appreciate anybody who listens to this show. We appreciate Bobby and Justin for what they do, for them actually liking us and listening to us. We appreciate all everybody from the tailgate who always listens, and everybody that we haven't met.
I'm continually surprised that people come up to me and know who I am. And I just like talking football with anybody who wants to talk football. But I am continually surprised and humbled by people just knowing who I am and whatever. Even if I don't even know if these people like me or agree with me half the time, but just know who I am and want to talk ball with me. It blows my mind every single time it happens. So it is very much appreciated.
Yeah, and yeah, so. who knows? Someday we may get big heads, and once we actually get a Patreon or something. But you know, I don't think that's the case. I just really do appreciate that this is as low as it's probably going to get. I say that now, and who knows in 5 weeks. But
Please, God.
at some point, every almost every team in every sport, at some point the pendulum turns, and at some point we're going to be fun again, and we're going to be good again, and we're going to learn from this character building time that we're in, and we're going to be in this all together.
And I'll say this, Mr. John Mara, I hope it's you that brings us there. It would be nice for you to swing the pendulum back before the end of your time as the owner. You know what I mean?
Everybody loves a redemption story, and everybody loves the second act. And I hope that it works out that Shane and Dable, they're the team who brings us into the next decade. I mean, time will tell, but we're not actively rooting for anybody to get their jobs smoked. Change is bad. It upends things. It stops the clock a little bit before it starts it up again. So it's almost over, Grump.
We're getting there.
It's almost over, this show and this season. So this episode.
All right, guys, we will see you all on Friday morning. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.